Greetings folks, Iolair here with another World of Warships replay. Today we've got a match of myself in the Tier 8 Soviet gunboat destroyer Kiev. I am divisioned with USS Clark W. Griswold, who is in the Tier 8 Japanese aircraft carrier Shokaku, and with Jimmy Jazz in the premium Tier 8 US Navy destroyer, the USS Kidd. This is a domination match on trap. We are top tier, and the opposing team has one of the new Tier 8 Royal Navy aircraft carriers, HMS Implacable, which I'll want to talk about later in the replay. My ship is commanded by the unique commander Viktor Znamensky, and I do take advantage of a couple of his buff skills. This match is going to showcase not only the strengths of the ship now that it has the repair party consumable, and that aligns with a very recent Kiev replay that I had on this channel in the last week or two, but it is also going to showcase the ability of this ship to be able to change to changing battle conditions because of its very high speed. So Jim and I are going to start here by moving into the Charlie Cap, and our allied aircraft carrier has detected an opposing farragut that's moving to the Cap. I'm going to get into the Cap first because basically I'm the fastest thing on this map, and I'm going to hold my fire here until I'm actually detected so that we maximize the amount of capture that we get on the Cap before they might try to reset me. The farragut here is dropping smoke, but frankly, he's just going way too fast. I don't understand. Sometimes I see destroyer players dropping smoke, but then don't slow to stay in the smoke, and we end up taking out the farragut, claiming first blood for the team. Here we do have an opposing Fiji that's firing on us as well. He takes a very substantial salvo from what I'm assuming is one of our allied battleships that was behind us, and he's trying to slow to get into his smoke. I'm trying to get a last few shots in on him, but I think he's also repairing at this time, and one of our allied battleships, I think it's the North Carolina, will get the final shots in on the Fiji and finish him off, and there he goes. So we have captured Charlie. We have a 2-ship advantage already, so that things are looking pretty good from that perspective. There are 2 other opposing ships up here by Charlie. One is Ungato that we can see, and the other is Leander that currently is obscured. And that Leander is actually going to kind of be a thorn in our side later in the battle. Jim and Clark are going to be hanging around the Charlie Cap up north here, trying to work down that very pesky and, well, to be fair, well-played Leander, while I'm headed down south to work on opposing ships that are on the south side of the map. So now that we've got Charlie essentially under control, and literally looks like almost 2/3 of our team is hanging around by Charlie, Jim and I are going to head down south to Bravo because we do have an allied Fubuki, which is our only other destroyer on our team, that's in the, or was in the Bravo Cap, but he has been taken out by the opposing Lightning, and that's a really tough matchup because the Lightning has the hydroacoustic search to avoid taking torpedoes, and also could fire from smoke while keeping his opponent detected, and the Fubuki just doesn't have the same gun power as the Lightning, and so we've lost our other destroyer already. We do have an allied Fiji that is still in Bravo contesting the Cap, but he's very wounded. I don't know where he took most of his damage from, whether that was drops from the aircraft carrier or from gunfire or both, but he is in bad condition. So I've got an allied Myoko here that's on my starboard side. He and I are going to move into the Cap here to aid our Fiji. Now, my original thinking here as I was approaching this Cap, and this is going to go into my point around being able to respond promptly to changing battle conditions. My original thinking is that I would push directly south through Bravo and try to get on the back flank of the opposing players that were over by Alpha. But 2 things are going to happen here. First is we are now going to detect the Lightning that is in the Bravo Cap, and I'm going to turn around so that we can focus on taking down the Lightning. And then by the time we get the Lightning taken out, the opposing team will have successfully pushed through Alpha. And the better thing for me to do is, instead of moving to the east side of Alpha to get on the back flank of the opposing team, is instead to basically take on the opposing flank head on from the north side of Alpha. And again, this is largely feasible, or much easier to do in a ship like this because of its very high speed. So we're going to focus on the Lightning here, and that was a terribly placed shot because I thought he was slowing down and he wasn't. And between my gunfire and this Byoko's and Jim's fire and the Kiev, in the Kid, we're going to finish off this Lightning here in just a moment. And there Jim gets the final shell in on the Lightning for his first kill. So the opposing team has done a good job at Alpha to basically take down the majority of the few boats that we did have that pushed towards Alpha to slow that flank. And so we are now even on ships. We have a small point lead because we took the Charlie Cap ahead of the opposing team, taking the Alpha Cap. But at this point, it's anybody's game. And here we do detect one of the other opposing destroyers, the Yakizuki. In fact, he is the last one because we finished off both the Lightning and the Farragut. So there's only one other destroyer that we have to contend with. And then I'm going to turn my attention to these cruisers that are pushing through to the north side of the Alpha Cap. Send some torpedoes here to discourage advance, or try to catch one of them off guard if they push up too far. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Royal Navy aircraft carriers briefly, because there is a Royal Navy aircraft carrier on the opposing team. And one of the traits of the Royal Navy aircraft is that they are very robust. They have a lot of hit points. And this will be very evident in this particular game, because the Implacable's planes will be quite difficult for me to shoot down. So in comparison to the other Kiev replay that I had within the last week or two, where I was able to shoot down 24 planes, I had the advantage of a Tier 6 aircraft carrier to contend with, so his planes would not be nearly as robust as the Tier 8s in general. And secondly, I had an opposing Shokaku, and again, the Japanese aircraft are not quite as robust. I also suspect that this particular Implacable player on this team in this replay is quite strong, because he does a really effective job in combating me later in the battle, and we'll get to that here in a few minutes. So right now, what I've been doing is what I talked about earlier. Was I responded by going and engaging these ships that were coming out of the north side of the Alpha Cap. Did almost take down the opposing York. The opposing York was eventually finished off. I did have an opposing Nuremberg that was actually making some pretty good shots on me at range, but I was able to help finish off the Nuremberg, and now I've switched my attention to this Indianapolis. So I'm using AP here because the armor piercing of these 130 millimeter rifles is very effective against broadside cruisers and into the superstructures of most battleships. And there goes the opposing Indianapolis. So one thing I should also note about Soviet gunboat destroyers is generally they don't fear radar ships. Because for two reasons. One is, again, because of their very high speed, these ships can often be quite difficult to successfully land shots and correctly predict the lead that you need in order to hit them. But secondly, the play style of these Soviet gunboats is that you should be generally playing from range anyway. And if you're within radar range, you're probably too close. And so generally radar ships are not something that are feared by Soviet gunboats, unless Soviet gunboats are trying to capture a point and do it in stealth and not be detected, which is usually not their role anyway. So I'm going to focus here on this opposing North Carolina that has now come out of the Alpha Cap. One thing that I thought was I imagine was a little bit frustrating for the opposing team is that these two battleships that went to the Alpha Cap, the Warspite and the North Carolina basically came out of the Alpha Cap and came into engagement over by Bravo largely unscathed, and which meant that the brunt of the initial punishment that the opposing team took as they came out of Alpha was borne by the destroyers. And here I'm going to finish off the Akizuki, so the opposing team has no more destroyers. So the brunt of the damage taken by the opposing team from the majority of their fleet that came out of Alpha was actually borne by the destroyers and the cruisers, which is not the way it really should be. Part of that may be because the cruisers simply advanced too rapidly out of the cap. Maybe they were emboldened by their advance through the Alpha Cap and their ability to take down the relatively small force that we had at Alpha, or maybe they were just not careful enough to slow and wait for their battleships. And because cruisers generally need to be either preferably abreast or behind battleships so that the battleships are able to absorb shots for the team while the cruisers and destroyers can do their job as well. So right now, basically the only ships remaining that came out of the Alpha Cap from the opposing team are these battleships, and the North Carolina's I'm going to set on fire again. He's going to take a couple of torpedoes from our aircraft carrier, and the opposing Warspite has moved into the Bravo Cap. Right now he's largely uncontested, but I'm not too concerned about that right now. So here I am currently coming under attack from the opposing aircraft carrier. I sent another fire on the North Carolina. In fact, it looks like the North Carolina is also flooding from one of the torpedoes. So this opposing aircraft carrier player is doing a very good job with his rocket ships on me, getting another heal in. I actually should have activated my speed boost already in order to improve my ability to avoid incoming fire from the aircraft carrier player, but I hadn't done it yet. I guess I was so concentrated on trying to finish off the North Carolina. You'll notice up by Charlie that the opposing Leander that I mentioned earlier in the replay, here I do finish off the North Carolina and get Arsonist in the process, and that's my 4th kill. But this opposing Leander that is in Charlie has been very persistent and trying to defend or take that cap. He eventually is sunk from the secondaries of our allied Bayern. And so that leaves the Warspite on the opposing team in the Bravo Cap, and he's about to get detected, and that also leaves the Implacable. Now, the Implacable was last detected in the Alpha Cap. He is focusing his attention on me, which makes me again believe that when I was playing at the time that I was actually quite close to him. I hadn't really come here to go CV hunting. It just happened to be that I was heading south as I was kiting the North Carolina, and it was just as advantageous for me to get to the Alpha Cap. I wasn't specifically coming here to look for the carrier. So, but I have in fact detected the Implacable. Now the Implacable is actually backing up here. We're actually the part that's closest to us is actually his bow, so he's backing up here, which is why I'm not giving too much lead on these salvos. And I'm getting kind of mixed results. I'm getting some pens. I did get a fire. I'm also getting a fair number of shatters. I don't quite know what the armor scheme is like on the Implacable. The top tier, the tier 10 aircraft carriers have a lot of armor, especially on their deck, and so it can be quite difficult to get consistent pens on aircraft carriers, especially if you're hitting their decks. And again, the aircraft carrier player here is making an effort to try to focus me. Obviously, I'm the main threat. We have now just sunk the opposing Warspite. That just leaves the aircraft carrier to be sunk. And now the aircraft carrier is moving towards me, or he's about to turn around and start heading back in my direction. Yeah, in fact, he is now starting to move toward me. So this game is going to be a win. I'm up to almost 123,000 in damage. I do set another fire. I have my 4 kills. I have Confederate and First Blood. And I've also used most of my repair charges. I have one more that I'm going to be able to use here in about 35 seconds, but I don't think I ended up using it because I am going to sink the Implacable for, there's High Caliber. I'm going to sink the Implacable for Kraken Unleashed and end the match for our team. And in fact, I am going to survive, and I'll get Dreadnought out of this match as well. So again, I have really enjoyed the Kiev now that she gets the repair party. I think she is a much more capable ship than when she had just the smoke available to her. And so I certainly, if you haven't tried the Kiev with her changes, or you haven't gotten to the Soviet gunboat line, I do encourage you to try them out because they are very fun ships to play. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed the replay and the commentary. Please do leave your comments below. And as always, we hope to see you out there, and we wish you happy sailing.